Welcome to the Spiral Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐚, a peak performance coach and business strategist dedicated to helping you see what's possible within you, the blind spots that are holding you back, and the solutions to ensure success and fulfillment without the hustle. I use my secret sauce of metaphysics, brain science, and scripture to work with God to manifest your ideal life and business. If you're ready to create massive forward momentum in your business and bust through the blocks that drag you down, join me on the Spiral Up journey and create the clarity, confidence, and consistency to become the CEO that lives your life by design. It's time to create the sustainable impact, income, and time freedom you desire faster. Now is the time to spiral up. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Spiral Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐚. It is so much fun to introduce you guys to one of my friends, a fellow coach, one of my coaches, one of my mentors, one of my colleagues. Like, Joni, there's all kinds of things that you are to me. And I'm just so grateful and so honored that you're here to join me for the Spiral Up podcast for this. And you guys, I just want to introduce you to Dr. Joni Francisco. She is the founder, the CEO of Flow with Dr. Joni. And there are so many things, girlfriend, that you do. But I wanted to ask you on to the show today because I wanted to highlight a very unique, special gifting that you have. And the reason really why I wanted you to be a part of my Spiral Up program. So Joni, you're one of my experts. And I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you're part of the community. And I just, first of all, welcome. So glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks so much, 𝐿𝐿. I'm glad to hear what I feel like whenever I get to be in your presence, your smile always just like can't help but make a person feel super smiley. So
well, thank you. I know. And those of you guys who are listening to this episode, instead of watching on YouTube and Facebook, I am wearing bright pink lipstick to, get myself all geared up for Costa Rica. And so as this is being aired, I would have just gotten back, but we're recording this ahead of time. And I am so excited. So bright pink smile right now as I'm talking to Dr. Joni. So girl, one of the things that's really fun about really thinking back on the way we met, we were both part of a group coaching program. And I remember there was a day, I don't recall all the details, but I'm guessing that I was maybe probably overwhelmed. That was probably the most likely scenario, right? And I remember you reaching out to me, you're like, hey girl, like I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit about what's going on. And as a friend, like you're like, hey, let's meet over Zoom because you're in, Idaho and I'm in Minnesota. So you're like, hey, let's get on the call. And it was amazing because during this brief encounter with you, barely knew you were able to unlock within me a subconscious block that I had been holding on for a really long time. And it was showing up in the way that I was doing business and the way that I was living life. And you were able to pinpoint it so quickly and help me to release it that I was just like, oh my gosh, when I built Spiral Up, I'm like, I need you on my expert team. I want my clients to be able to come to you and release some subconscious blocks that they might have because it's a gifting that you have. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, it certainly is a gift. I take it as that every single day that it's like I feel so blessed that I get to do what I do for people. Yeah. I traditionally started out as a physical therapist, and I've worked through a lot of different things through that, becoming nutritional therapy practitioner and then myofascial release, and brought me to that energy world that I didn't even really know existed.
Yeah.
And then really brought in or attuned me even at that point with the ability to be intuitive. Like if I was before, I didn't know it. And after that point, it was clearly different. That led me down a lot of months of like, am I a little bit like, do I have a pineal gland tumor? Do I like, what's happening? How am I seeing all this stuff? And, but also then Reiki found me, and Reiki really was the catalyst for unblocking so much for myself and in both my personal life and professionally. But, it also just led me down this idea that there's so much more than us, right? It really brought me back full spiritually. So then I can tap into that kind of essence of other people now too. And then alongside of that idea of like our subconscious is almost more of a spiritual organ than a mind organ, So
100%.
we really hold that in our body and in our mind, and things that have happened in the past come then manifest later in different
Absolutely.
ways.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And there's so many things that I want to unpack from that. First of all, I'm just going to say that it was really cool to collaborate with somebody like myself, right? Like I had this successful career in medicine, you did too, and then you just discovered that there were other gifts that you had that you were curious about and wanted to continue to go down that breadcrumb trail, and now here you are helping so many people in so many different ways. And I think that first of all, I want to just give you guys all the permission to just be curious about things that you are intrigued about, gifts that you might have, things that interest you. I mean, when it comes to quantum physics and universal laws, like I could geek out on that all day long. Like that's what I listen to, or that's what I read when I have downtime, right? Like I'm such a nerd, but it's a clue because it tells me like I would do this when I could do anything else. And that is something that I think has happened to you as well, is that you kind of went down this rabbit trail of discovering all of these things. And for me to discover a friend that also loves quantum physics, also loves universal laws, also loves the Lord, also loves all things mind, brain science, it's like, oh my gosh, we were meant to know each other, right? So shout out to Debbie for introducing us for sure.
Yep.
And, I wanted to say too that what people don't realize is that when we are on business, on our business journey, it's really important for us to recognize the fact that as we are spiraling up, as we're going to the next level of our business, the next level of ourselves, it is completely normal for us to bump up against old, I call them like spiritual bruises, right? Like things that we've had to overcome in the past. So we're like, whoa, 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 where did that show up again? Right? Where did that imposter syndrome come from? I thought I had gotten over that. Where did that fear pop in? I thought I had overcome that. And so as we're spiraling up, as we're transforming ourselves into the next version of ourselves, it's completely normal to have encounters with things that have basically been things that we've had to deal with our whole lives. And they, especially if we're not equipped and not like really tuning into them and how we want to overcome or pivot around them, I guess, it's easy for us to spiral down. And that's the whole point of Spiral Up, is that I want people to stay in massive forward momentum in their business. And sometimes what happens is we are knowing what we are supposed to do. Like, I know I should do this, this, and this, but for some reason, I just can't get myself to do it, or I just can't get myself to do it consistently. And when that happens, oftentimes in my experience, there's a subconscious block that has been holding us back so that our logic isn't quite overcoming it. It's either an energetic block or a subconscious block that we have to be able to look at and use it as a stepping stool to the next level that we're supposed to go to. So I want to let you kind of have the floor here and talk to us about those bruises, those spiritual bruises, those subconscious blocks, the things that we might have, harboring unresolved emotions in our body, and how that might be impacting our massive forward momentum.
Yeah, I do think you just covered it pretty well, but I will go in with a couple things that I really pulled too, is that piece of curiosity, right? I feel like that is the most important thing that we can do when we're on a healing journey or a business journey.
Yeah.
Um, I heard this quote before, and it was like, is your needing to be right more important than you like moving forward, right? And our brain tries to do that. And that's a lens that it looks for. And most of the time we're working from lenses from where like 6 to 9. So like things that happen to us as a kid, when we don't have the experience, or even the logic center of our brain isn't even developed yet to actually even know what it really meant, but we just take how it made us feel and what we wanted, and that meant something in contrast to that, and then we look for through the world like that until we see a place that we can change it, right? And really that's poking a hole in our subconscious belief. Almost like telling ourselves a better lie, because we've made it all up in our head as a kid.
100%. I mean, that's so true. It's like we have these memories that oftentimes are buried, and they form beliefs. And you've helped me through this. I mean, it was crazy, you guys. Like when Joni and I first did our first session together, God, I think I went down to a memory that I had when I was like 3 years old. as being a bother to my mom because she was overwhelmed with, having 3 kids under the age of 5 or, whatever. And it was just a lot for her. And it was showing up in my inability to ask for help from people. It was in my inability to want to bother people and disappoint them in a sense of like, I'm not going to be able to give you this project by today because it's not going to be as good as I want it to be. And it was like all this stuff rooted back to this feeling of me feeling like a bother, me feeling like I had to be a certain thing to my mom or to my parents to be able to be loved and accepted. And it was showing up in the way that I was showing up in my business. And it's like, oh my gosh. So now if I'm not asking for help, if I'm not saying to somebody like, hey, I would like to have a little bit more time to get this done, it's just going to manifest itself into this giant tornado of overwhelm. And that's going to suck me down to lower vibrational energy and away from my dream life. Right. And so if we don't start to acknowledge that, it's completely allow us to spiral down. And that was so cool when you helped me to do that, because I was able to look at that memory. And what's like you just said, it's like when that happens, we don't have the context from our frontal lobe of being, an older version of ourselves to say, that's not accurate. That's not truth. We just can take that emotion and we build a belief around it without any context, without any logic around it. And then we become essentially habitually looking for evidence in the outside world to prove that that's right.
Yeah. And that's really, the subconscious job, is that keeping you safe. And I say same. People say sane sometimes, but same
Yeah.
with an M because like
Mm.
not being change is dangerous, right?
Yeah.
And not being like other people or within the tribe or those things are really come up as danger to us. And so
Yeah.
um when we're processing through that,
Yeah.
we have to get back into that parasympathetic state, right? We've got to
Mhm.
call back in that calmness, call back in that safety, call back in all of that so that we can actually process it and not feel like we're in danger to
Mm.
move forward. And I feel like
Yes.
that's really where my Reiki gets the groove on there because I feel like within minutes I can transfer people to that state where they can actually heal from.
Absolutely. And that's just it. It's like you've taken me through these experiences where I have literally been able to release. I mean, it's you guys, this is going to sound crazy, but Joni and I like giggle at the end about all of our sessions because I'm like, I'll cough because coughing, it like literally feels like when I'm doing this that I just need to cough out these like blocked emotions that will sometimes start in my belly and then they'll come up and they'll kind of sit in my throat and then I'll cough and like I'll just feel like 100 pounds lighter. Tell us a little bit about that energy, those blocks of balls of energy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the feelings that we hold on to, I mean, in one way they become bigger and bigger as we hold on to them, right? And not release them. Other times we're holding them because it hasn't been safe to release them yet. And
Mm.
that's kind of along the same lines, but in an experience or a trauma or a situation where we felt unsafe, safety is our number one priority. So we shove that down and we hold on to it versus like if you were just to feel the emotions, right? Like 60 to 90 seconds. And so if you can sit with yourself or give yourself permission to do it a little bit later, you can allow that energy to move. And it really just is like we both subscribe to the universal laws, so it's like
Mhm.
it really just is the law of vibration, right? And
Mhm.
so if we can change that vibration, we can alchemize that energy and
Mhm.
move it through our body
Mhm.
and bring it to our forefront. And what's really cool again about Reiki and breath work and NLP and emotion code and somatic experiencing and those types of modalities is that a lot of times we can just work it out of our body without having to even know what it is or validate it or anything. A lot of stuff we can just let go once we get again into that safety state and we
Mhm.
intentionally allow and give ourselves permission and be curious and love ourselves through the process no matter what comes up.
Yeah.
um and yeah, I guess. Go ahead.
So basically you're saying to allow yourself. So sometimes we can shove down emotions and not process them because it hasn't been safe to do so. And when you can recognize that you're safe in this space and you can take yourself to a place where you feel that emotion and you let yourself sit there for 60 to 90 seconds and then allow it to basically move through your body and out of your body, you can release that I call it like a wadded up ball of energy, basically.
Yeah.
And 85% or more of our physical symptoms have an emotional component to them. And so that's one of the things that I've learned. I'm just curious if that's, the things that you also have learned as well, is that if we have some unresolved emotions that basically end up in these wadded up balls of energy, they can present themselves as physical symptoms throughout our body. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% believe that our physical manifestation, whether it's pain, illness, even like recurrent ankle sprains and things like that, are something that is sending us a message. It's something that's wanting to come out. It's time. It's time to go through it. It's time to let that process. It's what's going to allow you to grow next, right? Um, and I love how you're always really good at like the facts and the numbers and stuff still. And I have to say, like, I took this wild ride of faith, right?
Yeah.
And I really took it because I had to make my brain move the logic side to where, I worked from very logic, science, evidence-based stuff to the woo. And I'm on the other side now. Like, I know that it's quantum physics and I know it's
Yeah.
all energy and I know it's got to move, right?
Mhm.
But even now, knowing that even makes it more validated
Mhm.
that our emotions and our experiences and
Yeah.
our traumas stay in our body.
Mhm.
And especially in our organs, like our fascia, like the myofascia really holds on to things like that. And sometimes even in like an in-person therapy, people, I will be working on them and we're not even talking sometimes, and then they will just start crying just from holding it, their fascia, and
Mhm.
as it releases, right? And sometimes experiences come up and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, right? Because it can even release when we're not talking.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's really important that if you find yourself, stuck, if you find yourself not able to find that forward momentum, or you get to a certain space, right? Like this happens to me every single time I get really close to transforming into this next bigger version of myself. I get stuck right here because this is where, like you said, the subconscious wants to keep me sane, right? SAME. And so it's going to be bumping up against those old blocks. And so if you don't allow yourself to release them, you're going to keep bumping up against it. You're going to continue to stay where you're at. And then you're just going to get spiraling down into disappointment of, why can't I get this done? So that's so important, you guys, that if you haven't thought about that you work with somebody. And I'm going to make sure that Joni's, all of her information is in the show notes because she's so amazing, you guys. Like there's a reason that I subscribe to her program. And there's a reason that I send my students to her expertise as part of my Spiral Up program, because she's fantastic. And then the other thing that you do really, really well is to help us to identify beliefs that are no longer serving us. And this is interesting because, I applied for my first TED Talk finally, and took me a while to decide what I wanted to talk about. And it all came to the beautiful download that I'm going to talk about butts. But it's like the BUT, and it's belief underestimating truth. So what is truth? And then what is my belief around that is really underestimating what is truth, right? And I feel like that's a subconscious, belief that is holding us back because it's not truth, but it's what we've subscribed to that's holding us back and keeping us stuck. And so one of the things that I love is that you challenge the beliefs that I've had or my clients have about everything from money mindset to, scarcity to fear of success. I mean, there's so many amazing things that you do for people, and I'm so grateful for you. So give us an example of what maybe a false belief could be for somebody, and then how do you discover whether or not that's a belief that's holding you back?
Well, just one that comes to mind is, well, a belief. I was just thinking of a double bind.
Yeah.
Let me think
Yeah.
about a belief. Well, I don't know why that popped up, so I'm just going to use that one, and then if you want
Yeah.
me to go back and do it a little different.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like the idea. So double bind can be a belief because your beliefs are not congruent. You can have two beliefs at
Yeah.
the same time, and so that's when we're like that could be when we're transitioning. That could be when,
Mhm.
it could always have been there, two different things, and that could cause us a lot of stress and anxiety and overwhelm throughout our whole
Yeah.
life, right? And
Yeah.
sickness.
So, Joni, can you describe what a double bind is for people who don't know what that is?
Yeah, so a double bind is really when you have two beliefs that are in contradiction to each other. You have these two
Mhm.
thoughts, and they really can be new as you're transitioning or going into something different or growth,
Mhm.
and that could be
Mhm.
holding you back, or they could have been something that you've been living with for a long time and causing you overwhelm and anxiety and resistance to moving forward. And I think that's a lot where people, like you were talking about the spiral, and you feel like you're like just cruising along, and then all of a sudden something happens and you just get halted basically, and you don't feel like
Mhm.
getting your work done, you don't feel like any of those things. And so you might have this conflict of those beliefs. And one that really comes to mind for me, I think, is that the I want everything buttoned down and calm, and I want everything to be adventurous and spontaneous, right? And when
Mhm.
we have those two thoughts and we think of them as or, and we think of
Yeah.
one is right and one is wrong, then
Right.
that's where we get mixed in that circle that I call revolving, right? Like you can either evolve or revolve. We think it has to be one or the other, right?
Mhm. So
And
that's the
and
belief right
really,
there. It's just, yeah, like the double bind is almost an example of the belief that it has to be right or wrong, either or. Like it
yeah,
can't be and.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yep,
like so that's basically discovering like, okay, well, this is a belief. This is my butt, right? My belief that I'm realizing that is holding me back. So then how do I so okay, let's just say that I realize like, yeah, I have a butt. Like I have a belief that's holding me back. That's not true. What do I do? How do I reframe that?
the way I do that is a little bit different for every person because that really comes to me intuitively, like to be honest. But
Yeah.
one of the ways you can go is to go down the journey of where you developed those beliefs, right? And so we
Mm.
can go
Mhm.
down, we can identify it if that's not where you've already identified it from, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then work that out of the emotion that's behind it. Why is that true to you? And is it really true? Because the
Mhm.
lens may be skewed, right?
Mhm.
And also then just that reconcile, like bringing it into your awareness and reconciling that it's an and universe, right? Like falling back onto the laws of the universe, that you can be both buttoned down and have everything in order, and you can be spontaneous and adventurous, right? It's just,
Yeah.
how do you look at it that way? How do you
Right.
change your lens so that you can see that doing ABC like this is adventurous, right? Or
Mhm.
something like that. And
Yeah.
then um and then how I have clients then go forward with that is using affirmations, but I do them a little different. I have people ask questions a lot of the times. For
Mhm.
example, like, what does it take? What would it take for me to feel both buttoned down and spontaneous and adventurous at the same time?
Yeah. And so really what you've done is you've helped to identify the block, identify that's no longer serving us, and you're basically helping us to poke a hole in the validity of it so that you can
Yeah.
help us to discover like, is this true? Because chances
Yeah.
are, if it's not true and we're hanging on to a belief that's underestimating truth, then that belief is going to hold us back. Right. And so basically, just poking that hole in it is our recognition that, like, hey, I thought that it had to be this way or that way, but it doesn't. And so now that I poked a hole in it, now let's fill it with this new story that you want. Right.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah. And so definitely doing that, those affirmations come in as what would it take, or how is it possible, that like I feel like I get to live this most adventurous life and be all put together. Or I would imagine most people the all put together is going to be a lie, right? Like that belief is not very helpful programming for most people, because that's where we get that perfectionistic, and that's where we get
Yeah.
the failure to move forward or even take the next step, is because we're afraid we're going to make a mistake, right? So
Yes. Yes.
changing your idea of what is, how would you feel put together, and is that more outcome driven than process driven? Is that, where does that fit in, so that you can either just change that, like, I'm happier being spontaneous and adventurous and everything will get done, and believe that,
Yeah.
and leave the
Yeah.
other even.
I love that. And so it's like I get goosebumps right now, because it's like the perfect way for us to kind of bring this whole conversation to a beautiful close. It's that when we can figure out the root cause of that belief to begin with, and we recognize, like, okay, this was built on the belief that I have to earn love from people that I care about, or that I'm not going to be accepted. You see how that trickles down into all of these pieces, right? So it's like now my all or nothing, right or wrong brain that I am struggling with in this space, it can be linked back to me feeling like I was wrong or had to do this to be right, kind of thing, right? So it's getting to the root cause of it. But you also get to look at the future version of yourself, and you get to be like, what belief do I want to hold in this space?
Yeah.
What is the consistent view that I want to have? And how can I take that new belief? And so one of the things that I do find people struggle with when it comes to the universal laws and trusting that it's all going to work out. This is one thing that I see a lot, is that people want to believe that it's going to work out, but there's still these beliefs that are holding them back. Like, but my Aunt Becky believed that and that didn't work out for her, whatever the case may be. There's these little like cracks in our belief. What things would you say to somebody that finds that they have cracks in their belief, and they want to believe that it's all going to work out? They want to believe that their dream partner's on their way to them. They want to believe that their business is going to expand, but.
Yeah. I, I think there's a couple things there. I think it's back to that curiosity, right? Like, and I think that's how questions help you open up to that and to see it.
Yeah.
But then to be
Yeah.
looking for it, look where you're supported, look where it's showing up. Um, but also, I'm gonna guarantee that you think that your belief and that feeling that you're going to attain that belief is going to manifest an outcome through you, much different than than that you're not, or that you're not supported, which is going to manifest as body symptoms or chronic conditions or autoimmune disorders, versus just having the belief change is going to change your physical makeup, and it will produce a different chemical reaction, and it's going to produce a different result. So
Yeah.
it's that constant spaced repetition, right? It's just like, keep it going, keep visioning it, keep working. But then, and this is where people get stuck a lot too, with the law of vibration, right? Like, our law of attraction, which is law of vibration, is they think that's all they have to do. But the next
Mm-hmm.
step is taking, again, being in that space where you can listen, and then take the aligned action, not the
Yes.
busy action that you're wanting to
Right.
take. Like, really
Yes.
slowing down to speed up and take those aligned actions instead of the things that you think you should be doing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. There's so much in this. And, Joni, you do so much for me. Like everything from nutrition coaching to subconscious belief blocks to helping me get my schedule in store. Like you do so much for me as one of my coaches. And I just am so grateful that my students have access to you. That's one of the most amazing benefits of Spiral Up, is that my high level students get access to one-on-one with Joni and myself. And all of the students in Spiral Up get access to the training that she has placed inside of our library. So it's just so much fun to have all of these pieces come together and let people to completely spiral up in their lives and their businesses. It's so much fun to have you here. We will make sure that we have all of your information in the show notes. Joni, is there anything else that you wanted to leave our audience with today before we wrap up?
Yeah, a gift, because we all love gifts, right? So I do have an ebook. It's called So Within, So Without, and it really goes into a lot more detail of a lot that we talked about today, and it'll give them a good resource, but it also has some practical tools at the end that they can do at home. And
Love
so
it.
I'm sure you'll have a link to that, but that's at
Yep.
jonifrancisco.com/unlock-flow. And, but I'm sure just find it in the show notes, be a lot easier, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, here's to finding your flow, and here's to spiraling up. Bye, everybody.
Awesome.
So much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Each honest review helps me spiral up so that I can serve you even better. Whether you're feeling a lack of impact, income, or time freedom, or perhaps you're just ready for massive momentum in your business, let's chat. Apply for a breakthrough call so that you can gain clarity, identify what's holding you back, and make a plan to spiral up. Head on over to im-lifebydesign.com/breakthrough or access the link in the show notes. For immediate support, log into our community, the Better Club. We focus on inspiration, tactical guidance, and support. This is a community that wants to be better, do better, and have better in life and in business, and we're going to help you do the same. Let's spiral up, friends.